Hello and welcome to the Gluware multi-vendor config drift video. Config drift was designed for simplicity to support multi-device, multi-vendor network device configuration by snapshotting, tracking, and providing audit reports with a single workflow and UI approach. Config drift is built on the same model-driven intelligent orchestration engine used by all Gluware apps and solution, and currently supports 13 vendors and 17 OSs. The Gluware 3.3 release includes a new scheduling and integrated device management solution. We'll start with that device management solution and then work our way through config drift. Here you can see the current organization has the Device Explorer already populated with routers, switches, load balancers, and firewalls. And the column selector can be used to organize the workspace for generating and exporting inventory reports, licensing files, etc. The functions or actions supported including discover devices, adding devices, cloning devices, importing devices in bulk fashion, as well as exporting devices and deletion. Now we'll pick a few of the devices out of the Device Explorer and use the Device Instance Editor to take a look at their configuration details, as well as the asset information for hardware and software for each. The device details were collected in the last discovery session of the Device Manager, and the configuration is the initial configuration from the device. Now let's take a look at how you'd manually import a device into the Device Manager and then automatically discover the hardware and software inventory and details using the IP address, username and password, and the device detect function and discovery features of the Gluware engine itself. For this case, the Palo Alto PA200 has been imported. We'll now use the discovery action to collect all of the hardware and software asset information being discovered off the platform. And once completed, we'll continue the life cycle of this device from the Device Manager to config drift. Now here in config drift, we can see our Palo Alto device has not had an initial snapshot taken. The primary actions in config drift include capturing snapshots, setting a snapshot as default, and then exporting audit reports. So let's take that snapshot of the Palo Alto device. You can give each snapshot a meaningful name or description, as well as schedule if you do not want that capture to occur immediately. Now we can see that snapshot is completed, and let's see the instance editor functions for it by double-clicking on it. First, we can see that initial configuration in the configurations view. Next, we can look at the snapshots summary, which will include all of the different snapshots taken to date. And then the device details has all of the information on inventory that it was captured with the Device Manager. We will now take a snapshot of a number of different devices in config drift by first selecting them, and again selecting the take snapshot or capture snapshot. Now here, again, we have that option to either schedule or start the capture. If we want to schedule, we can do things like daily scheduling, as we have reflected here, weekly, monthly, as appropriate. But we're going to go ahead and just take the capture currently. You can see the status of each of the different snapshots here that have been taken. Finally, we're going to make a couple of manual changes on a couple of the different devices. The Cisco 4351 will have a loopback interface added. And what we're doing here is making these manual changes just like a network operator might on a day-to-day basis, and then we're going to take a look at what has occurred and how it's reflected in the config drift workflow. We can see that loopback interface has been added here. And now we'll go to the Juniper SRX 210 and make a similar change. In this case, we're going to disable an interface. Now, you could remediate these changes if these features were in the scope of config modeling, but all we're doing here in this video is showing the impact on the config drift mechanism, and you can see the config modeling videos to get more detail on that lifecycle action. Let's look at the initial state of the interfaces, and then we'll go and disable this gigabit 001 interface. You can see the change, and then as we commit it, it'll be a part of the configuration. Now let's go back and take snapshots of this set of devices again with these two changes in mind. As you can see, there is a mismatch between the default configuration and the current configuration for these two devices as reflected by the two overlapping red circles at the top. We're going to go take a look at those two devices and compare the initial snapshot to the current one. You can see that there's one change here reflected between the default snapshot and the current configuration, and we can select that configuration change and look at it. There's the loopback interface that we'd added, and since we want that change in the case of the Cisco device, we'll just set that snapshot as the default and proceed. Now we just double-click on the context-aware capture status to open the compare window for the SRX device. We can see the default snapshot and the current snapshot and select the current change. The disabling of the gigabit Ethernet interface is clear, but in this case we're unclear whether or not we want that change to be there or not, so we download an audit report. That audit report has all the details for the current status of the config drift utility for this set of devices. We can see the change status of the SRX device, and that will be discussed with the network engineers, and typically we would also take the downloadable difference file that is available here as well in the compare window. This completes our config drift video, and thanks for watching.